Good afternoon, it's Valerie from the Center for Effective Living. Hoping that you're having a wonderful day today. I've just spent my morning on a rather physical project. I'll tell you more about that perhaps during the week. But I thought I would jump online and say thank you for following our page. And if you're watching the video, thanks for watching the videos. And I thought that given that you've been part of our community, that perhaps today what I might do is to actually say, well, how did Center for Effective Living actually come about? What does it mean? What are its roots? So the Center for Effective Living was a name that popped into my mind when I sat down to have coffee with another psychologist a few years back. He and I were having a coffee talking about, I guess, some of the sorrows that we were seeing in our work, in particular in the area of burnout and people with really great caring hearts and giving roles and responsibilities, just burning out in the process. And I actually started to reflect as we were talking about how we talk about early intervention and prevention for mental health, that when it comes to things like burnout, that's exactly what we need to do as well. And I said, and wouldn't it be great if there was a place, a one-stop place, that could focus its knowledge-based content and service delivery in the area of not only helping people to recover from burnout, but to also put research and thinking into processes for early intervention. And then I just articulated it and I said, something like a center for effective living. And when I actually went back home that night, I Googled it, as you do, just to see whether anybody else had that name, and found that there wasn't anybody in Australia, and so I registered the business name. Now, the Center for Effective Living and the name comes from a passion that I have to actually help the helpers. Hello there, thanks for watching. Helping the helpers, that my thought was that if we could actually help the ones who help others, then every client that we saw would mean that a family, a community, a group, an organization would be helped as well. So I won't talk so much about burnout and the work that we do in that area, because we still are a group of clinical psychologists. So effective living for me also comes to my mind. Before I run through the definition, I probably just want to tell you my philosophy as a psychologist. So having been a psychologist, I started my early career actually before as a clinical psychologist, more in the human resources and organizational arena. And I was fairly young. I was in my 20s, and my first two jobs were actually in the corporate sector. And I remember thinking to myself that I was putting all this effort into trying to work out how to extract effectiveness or success from individuals to help organizations and corporates to meet their bottom lines and more. And I found myself more and more sitting in a value tension within myself, that I thought, I actually would much rather work with the individuals so that they could live effectively and well in their own lives. Because when they do, if we actually started with I've just got to close something here. Because if they actually were able to find that center of effectiveness within themselves, that they would then be able to live effectively for their families, their communities, and then also their organizations. And I decided to retrain to become a clinical psychologist. And my boss at the time, I don't know if he'll ever see this video, but he might one day, and he might remember, was a very, very senior individual in the organizational human resources training and development world. And I remember sitting down with him as I tendered my resignation, and he said to me, why are you doing this? And I explained it to him, and he said to me, Valerie, you might want to come back to us. You might find that that's just too hard. And he explained to me that when he himself came from a clinical background, that how tiring and how burnt out one can get in the work. So I retrained, became a clinical psychologist, and of course never turned back. Now, in my course of becoming a clinical psychologist and starting out in the hospital setting, that's when you actually really realize that there is suffering and there is a whole life and a whole of life impact when you have a mental health issue. And the more I worked in rather chronic and severe psychological presentations, the more I realized that as a therapist, myself and my clients, we would be sitting in this space where you'd start to feel like all we were talking about were symptoms, and whether we were doing okay or whether we were not doing okay. And the focus then would become on the illness and on the symptoms, and the focus on the individual and their lives, if we weren't careful, would go out of focus. And I think as a therapist, the compassionate side of me kicks in at that point to say, no, you're not defined by this. And probably too, I think therapists also have that other side to their identity, and that is being advocates. Yeah, saying we're going to advocate for you. We're not going to have this focus on just what's going wrong or on your symptoms. Let's advocate for you. Let's take a break from the approach that we've been taking, and let's just look and say, what would lift your spirits? What would give you that slight feel of a soar in your wings, that you could feel like just for today or just for this week, that you were more than the sum of these difficulties? And the more that I worked in that paradigm, the more I could see, I suppose, a sense of who the person really was or is, their history, their story, their personality, their colors, their interests, their values. All of that started to come to the fore. And so for me, effective living isn't about fixing things or eradicating symptoms or making sense of diagnosis. For me, effective living is saying, how about we just focus on not so much getting it right, but doing what's best. What's best for you? What do you need right here, right now, today, in the next week, in the following weeks? That doesn't mean that we lose sight of the clinical focus. No, we still have to keep that in sight. But we basically want to also balance all of life, stage of season of life that you're in. You might be a parent, you might be a worker, a daughter, a father, all of those roles are also important. And if we can restore a sense of strength and hope and a degree of fluency in the other areas of your life as well, then you're actually going to be less focused on a mental illness and more focused on your quality of life. And when you're improving your quality of life, you're actually feeling like you're moving forward one step at a time. So when I envisaged a Center for Effective Living, it was these concepts that were important to me. One was, how can we actually help carers, people who care for others, to have some upstream help for themselves to be in their own effective space and not burning out? And second, I guess, is the philosophy of actually saying that when we're actually helping people with mental health issues, that we don't get too fixated on getting it right to eradicate or to just problem solve away symptoms, but we actually remember that they're people with stories and a context that are really important and can be quite life-giving as well. So that's my story on the origins of the Center for Effective Living. And just an encouragement that when I actually say that it's the small steps that eventually lead to the big steps, I really mean it. I don't minimize or as a clinician those small steps at all, because no matter how small they may seem, it's a step. You're not staying put. You're not staying still. See you later.